This is the Oral History Project at the Mighty 8th Air Force Heritage Museum. Today is February 22nd, 2002, and today I'm interviewing, and could you tell me your name, please?
Ismael Guillermo Velasquez.
And Mr. Velasquez.
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 That's right.
Could you also tell me where and when you were born?
I was born in La Ceiba, Honduras, 2 May 1921.
And then is Honduras where you grew up?
No. In order to give you a background of Honduras, I must go back with the history of my father. And the conditions, the cultural conditions at that time, in the year in 1800 or 1800, yeah, when my father was a young man, his mother was named Velasquez, and his father was a landowner of the Maya, of the Indian Mayas, and which people want to know what I am. They ask me if I'm Spanish. I say, I'm not Spanish. I'm a Maya. My father is 100% Maya Indian, and I'm very proud of that. And so my father's father did not recognize him as his son because he himself was married and had his own family. So my father chose my grandmother's last name, Velasquez, as his last name. And he was a very poor individual, so he hunted iguanas. Iguana is a long lizard which are edible down there, very tasteful. It tastes like young chicken. And by that he educated himself. He even became a preacher throughout, a Christian preacher, spreading the word of Christ throughout the land, and he became somewhat successful in as much as he was able to put himself through the lower grades, and then he put himself through the College of Law in Honduras. And then somewhere or the other he was able to go to Guatemala, which is a neighboring country of Honduras, and spent 2 years in law in Guatemala. And then later on he went to Nicaragua and spent 2 years in law, studying law in Nicaragua. And then somewhere or the other he went to what was known as British Honduras, which is known today as Belize. Now, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Guatemala are under the Napoleonic Code, while British Honduras was under the Anglican Code, which was different. Now, in that time, my father, of course, he spoke Spanish and Honduras, and he learned English in order to carry on in his study in British Honduras and Belize. So he was trained in these 3 different countries' laws. So he was very much wanted by large corporations, primarily the Standard Fruit Company in Honduras, to carry on the businesses among the countries of Honduras, Nicaragua, Guatemala, and British Honduras. And so he was hired by the president at that time to coordinate the Honduran government with all these other countries. And like it was the culture in those days, that my father was a well, he liked women quite a bit. He preferred married women, to be honest. And the president told him, he says, this can't go on like this, Velasquez, because you got too much of a high position here. You have to get married. And my father's favorite phrase was, all women are the same. In Spanish, it's todas son putas. They're all whores. But he said, the president told my father that he knew of a woman who was a Seventh-day Adventist in a school in Roatán, which was an island off the coast of the Gulf of Mexico now. And he says she is pure woman. So my father agreed to marry. So they were married in the capital of Tegucigalpa, and then they came. My father, his main stay was in La Ceiba, Honduras. That's his home. It took about 2 weeks to go by mule from Tegucigalpa to La Ceiba. So that's where they lived. I'm telling you all of this in order to give you a background of who I am. And I was born in La Ceiba, and on or about 1925, my father and mother were divorced. And
okay, and so you were about 4?
I was 4 years old, yes. And then eventually my mother came over to the United States by herself, because my father had 26 children by 26 women, and he took care of all of it, and they were all girls, and he put them all through school. But I was the only boy, and I was the only legitimate son that he had, and so definitely he would not let my mother have me. But my mother did come to New Orleans, and she found work here in New Orleans, and I stayed with my father. In the meantime, there was a Roosevelt in 1928, 1929 is when we had this depression in the United States. And my father was sent to Europe and was a diplomat with that portfolio. That means that he could suggest, he could see, the government was paying him to do this, but he could not make any definite plans. So we went from Honduras to Cuba to Spain and to France, and we stayed in France, in Paris for about a year, 1928. And while I was there, and while I was in Honduras, I was in the 3rd grade, more or less. So my father put me in the 4th grade in France, in Paris. And after 1 year, more or less, we came back to the United States.
Would you like to take a break and I could get us a glass of water?
No. And we went back to the United States, and there was a conflict. Now, the way that things are worked in the United States is that people vote for whomever they want to govern the country. While in the Central American countries, or the banana countries, they fight to see who's going to be the president. And so that was going on when we came back to the United States, to Honduras, in more or less about 1932. And in this what went on there, he was assassinated by the chief of police of the town, and he shot one other of my father's companions that he had. That's being a lawyer and a man of great means, because my father did have a lot of money those days.
Okay, your father was assassinated?
He was assassinated. He was shot. And this other fellow was also shot. And he was looking for me because he wanted to get rid of all the Velasquezes. And I hid behind a statue. When he was looking for me, he couldn't find me. So that's the reason I'm here. Now, what happened at that time, since my mother was a Seventh-day Adventist, she was contacted by the Seventh-day Adventist people, and they took me up and they wrapped me up in a mat and they brought me up into the hills and they got in touch with my mother in New Orleans to come and get me. Eventually she came, and eventually I went back to New Orleans in 1932. That's what that was. The reason I'm saying this is to give you a background of how I got into the Army. And so I was put again in the 4th grade. I was 3 years in the 4th grade. 1 year in 3rd grade in Spanish, and 1 year in French, and 2 years in English. And eventually, I got out of 4th grade. I was bigger, much bigger than most of the kids out there. And so schooling with me were easy, because I had this experience, and since I spoke French very well, and Spanish, of course, and I was learning English. And my father and mother had an understanding that I would be put into a religious school in my younger days. So I was put in Holy Cross College, which is a Catholic school. My father was a Catholic, and I learned English better there. I was living with these in this Catholic school. I learned English within a year and 2 years. I was able to speak and understand and make myself be understood. And so I went fast. And then when I got to high school, I went fast. I finished high school in 1941. Then I went to Tulane because my mother wanted me to be a doctor. That's the main thing in her life. She wanted her son to be a doctor. I was at Tulane, and New Orleans is the 8th Naval District. And all of my friends that were at Tulane, oh, by the way, in order to learn better English, I did away with mathematics. I made a deal with the mathematical teacher, and then I took speech and debating and drama instead in order to make my English better. And all of these individuals, especially my debating team, they were all in uniform from the 8th Naval District. God knows that some of these guys went all the time while they were in school. They never did go to war. They stayed in there as naval officers.
Okay, can I interrupt?
Yes.
Where were you when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
I was going to Tulane University, and I was on a Sunday, and I'll never forget that. That's printed in my mind. And which it said that the Japanese have attacked Hawaii, Pearl Harbor, and this is an infamous day. Well, that puts us now in the war. And we were expecting to go to war sooner or later. And of course, at that time, you have at the age of 18, you had to register to be drafted. Regardless of where you were, whether you were a citizen or not a citizen, everyone had to be drafted, had to register. So I just got myself. Sooner or later, I was going to be drafted. I was at home listening to the radio, and of course, even though I was a foreigner, more or less, I still hated the Japanese because of what they've done to us. And with time, I did my number came up. I quit Tulane because I knew I was going to be drafted. And in the second year, I went to Tulane at night, and I was taking Greek and Roman ancient history primarily at night. And then I was drafted, and then I went through the whole thing of the physical examination and so forth and so on. And then the last thing, there was some officer says, "Where were you born?" I said, "According to this, says you were born in La Ceiba, Honduras." I said, "Yeah, that's right." He said, "Well, you don't have to be in the army." He says, "You don't owe any allegiance to this country. So goodbye." I said, "Wait a minute, I want to be in this army." No, he says, "But you don't have to be." He says, in the individuals that were in the First World War, those individuals that were not citizens were not allowed to become naturalized citizens until 1926, I believe he said. So probably says that'll be the same thing. Sooner or later, if you want to become a citizen, you may become a citizen. There's nothing right now that says that you cannot become a citizen if you don't want to be in the army. But you don't have to be in the army. He says, "But I want to be in the army." He says, "Everybody at school," I says, "they're all in uniform in the Navy, and I want to be in the army." And anyhow, I says, "I have no love for the place where I was born in Honduras because my father was assassinated by the government anyhow because of political reasons. I want to be. He says, if you want to fight Honduras, I'll be glad to be out there in the front lines." "Okay," he says, "if you insist, you have to sign here to say that you have no objections of becoming a soldier in the United States Army. You sign right here stating that you have no objections." So I signed the paper that I had no objections. So I was not really drafted. What happened was that I volunteered. And so this was in 1942.
Okay, had you been keeping up with what was happening in Europe as well?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Because you'd been in France, what were your attitudes at this point towards the Nazis?
Well, at that time, we had more or less a gathering of young people, and we were really against. We didn't know what they were doing primarily to the Jews of the concentration camps. We didn't know anything about those things, but we knew that the blitzkrieg, as they called it, was going so fast and overtaking these countries, and just taking them over so fast, and we felt that their liberties were being violated, and we were against it, and most of us wanted to become as students and at Tulane University. We used to gather together and discuss the war, and we were all for the United States. And as I said, most of my friends were eagerly became parts of the 8th Naval District or Navy people because it was right there and was easy for them to take. I tried to do it because I wasn't a citizen; they wouldn't take me. And so, no, we were all for it. The people at Tulane University, we were all for this war against Hitler. And of course, the Japanese, we hated them. Slanty-eyed individuals. So I was eager to get into it primarily because all of my friends were in it, and because I believe that what was going on in Europe was not according to the way we knew things were in the world. So in 1942 in December, I was in December, a couple of days before Christmas. So I went to a camp, and then from the camp said, "We're going to give you a 7-day leave. We're going to put you in the Army Reserve." So I have 7 days Army Reserve time. Came back home for Christmas, and then went back. And from there, I went to Fort Knox. Because I always liked music quite a bit, and because the test and the test that somewhere or the other decided I was a wonderful man for Morse code. So, and somewhere or the other, at that time they needed armored divisions, and so we sent to Fort Knox, and had my basic training there, and then from there I went to the Morse code school in Fort Knox, in which they taught us message center, cryptography, besides Morse code, and the SOI, signal operations instructions, that is a secret document which governs the passwords of the day, of what's the password from one place to the other, and so forth, was a very secret thing. And so after finishing that school, we were sent to Camp Campbell, which is adjacent, I believe, to Tennessee and Kentucky, to the 12th Armored Division. There we were set up in pup tents until they got organized. And little by little, they all came from all over. But even some of the people that had been in college, ASTPs, they were. We came to the 12th Armored Division. Now I must tell you that in the signal company, most of them, believe it or not, they had a certain amount of college, because it was required that they knew how to operate radios, or they knew something about wire, or and some of us knew about cryptography, and I went there as a cryptographer and as a Morse code operator. And they were highly intelligent. Most of the people in the signal, 152nd Armored Signal Company, they were not the dregs. As later on in life, I found out that the infantry was where people they were cannon fodder. The infantry, they were there to kill or be killed. But with the signal company, who were there to service, to bring these people to become better soldiers and equip them with the capability of killing or building and stop from being killed. And after Camp Campbell, went to the Tennessee maneuvers. Tennessee maneuvers, all of the armored divisions that were not in Europe or were not in Africa really, were being worked in Tennessee maneuvers. We destroyed Tennessee awful. I mean, tracks all over the place. But the American people in Tennessee didn't mind that, I suppose. But we really did got together all of the different divisions in the Tennessee area. And then, after Tennessee, it was decided that we would have our time in the Dust Bowl of Texas, known as Abilene, Texas. And there were lizards and rattlesnakes and any other thing that was not worthwhile being alive was to be found there. So in Abilene, Texas, we set up a camp. In Camp Barkley, Texas, we call it. That was 12th Armored Division settled there. And there we went out practically every day. We close order drill, and because some reason or the other, because of my college education and because I've been trained in the at Fort Knox in the radio and cryptography and so I was a teacher. That was my first time in the military that I became a teacher. taught radio, and I taught basics of the SOI. SOI is a very important book, Signal Operations Instructions. That is the main thing for secrecy in the military. And we went out in different, we were always out in the Dust Bowl out there, and primarily having the infantry, the armored infantry, and the tank battalions, and the artillery doing their main job of fighting. We were supporting them. And of course, we had what was known as foot messengers. And all of us that were not actually in the message center is the heart of where messages come in and they go out. And with the message center is the cryptography close by. Messages came in the clear and put them into code, and then from there they were sent out to the radio, or else they were sent out by messenger. And we became friendly because we were so close together. And well, it was boresome to me. Most of the time I was either had night duty or day duty or in the message center, or else I had to go out to the 493rd Field Artillery, the 23rd Infantry, or Tank Battalion with somebody driving a Jeep. I went around as the messenger. The stuff that came from the headquarters. We were assigned to the headquarters area of the division, where the general and the G1, G2, G3, G4 were. And from there we put out the information, different papers to the different articles, the different places throughout the division. And to me it was awesome. The same thing over and over again. Well, and of course, when we were in the barracks, they put me teaching something or the other. And one time in Camp Barkley, we got a word from the company commander that says, Velasquez says, you put on your Class A uniform. Says, you're going into Abilene. I said, well, what did I do? That's the first thing that we did. What did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? Says, you're going to Abilene. And then there was a staff car, what was it, Chevrolet or Ford or whatnot, came up to the orderly room. Says, get in here. Says, what's going on? What's going on? And it's another fellow with me that we were all PFCs, and went to Abilene. I said, what's going on? I said, don't know. They told us to take you to the judge in Abilene. So we went to Abilene to the judge up there, and he says, how much? The judge says, how much schooling have you had? So we did have this. I had about 1.5 years of Tulane University, and I had, of course, the other guys had more or less the same amount. He says, where were you born? He says, I was born in Honduras, La Ceiba. I said, where were you born? He says, I was born someplace in Canada. He says, you realize that you are cleared for secret material, and you're not a citizen of the United States? And I said, well, we have nothing to do with that. Says, that's what the Army told us to do. I said, no, it says you have to become a citizen. It says, either that you become a citizen, says, or else we said you have to become a citizen. It says, you object? No, we don't object. Okay, so it says, you know who the president is? Yeah. And you know who the Secretary of Defense is? And a couple of questions, common questions. Okay, it says, here, sign here. It says, There's a guy over there going to take your picture, and so on, fast like, and then he says, you sit over here, and says, we left out there with a certificate, with our pictures, and one thing he told us is, you cannot have this reproduced. He says, if you want to prove that you're a citizen of the United States, you have to make a certified copy that somebody has seen this certificate, and that proves that you're a citizen of the United States. But you cannot reproduce this. You cannot make a picture of it. So we went back to the company, and this guy was driving, took these certificates and brought it to the general. And the general saw them, and then we found out that he was in trouble, because here we were, two foreigners with secret clearance, and that was not to be done. So that's one of the things that...
That's how you became a citizen.
That's the way we became a citizen.
Do you remember the date?
In 1943. 1943. Yeah, 1943, someplace. If you want, I can get you that information. I didn't think it was. I keep that in the bank.
Right.
And I do have certificates to the effect that I have seen this certificate and this, and signed by what do you call these people that make
Notary.
Notary public. Yeah. So I've never been with such a name like Ismael Velasquez. You know, you would say, well, he's a foreigner. But later on in life, especially these Polish names, they're very hard Polish names, and then German or Jewish names. So we are a country of all peoples. So now it is not really, nobody questions us. As long as you're an American citizen, as long as you are in the United States, and today we are questioning these, especially these people with Arab names, because we're not too sure that they are our friends or not. Anyhow, so we got orders that says we're going overseas. Everybody has to have a will. So I told the company commander, I said, well, I can't make a will, because my property, my father, I told you, was a rich man. In those days, he was a rich man. I had about 1/4 of the house of prostitution in La Ceiba that belonged to my father, to me. And then I had some other property throughout La Ceiba that belonged to me. So I said, according to the judge advocate here, I said, I have to go to the consul of Honduras in order to make my will, and he has to sign it. So they made a deal. The first sergeant made a deal. He gave me 2 3-day passes. Now, 3-day pass, you only allowed 72 hours to go. But he gave me 2 of them to go to Houston, Texas, where the consul of Honduras was, and for me to get my will made. And, I got my will made, and then I met a girl there, of course. As I said before, that's one of the, at this age, I'm glad that I did such a thing. But I met a girl there, and she was in the Rice Hotel in Houston, Texas, and now we got along very well. And she became my witness to this will. And then afterwards, we went out. We became lovers, more or less. And to make short right now, I was one of the very few individuals during the war that I got 4 and 5 letters per day, because she used to write me all the time. Oh, so many letters. I said, who you got? How many girls you got that's writing? But this girl, she used to write me quite often during combat. Anyhow, I got my will done. By the way, in Houston, Texas, I was putting her on a taxi about 11 o'clock at night from my hotel for her to go home. The military police caught me and they put me in jail. That's the second time I've been in jail in the military. And they found these passes of 2-3-day passes of my person, which is strictly not legal. But they could not give me a leave because we were alerted to go overseas, you see, and I had to have this done. That's the only way they could do it. So it was about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and they finally got a hold of my first sergeant, and they got a hold of my company commander, and they explained to him that's the only way that they could get me to get this way. Exactly what I told them. But that's the way they didn't take my word for it, which is right. Didn't take my word for it. So about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, they put me in a Jeep and brought me up to my hotel and says, I want you out of here. Tomorrow morning you take a bus and go back to Camp Barkley, Texas. So that's another incident that happened with the military. Now, we went to, soon thereafter, we got into trains and we went as far as Canada to the falls. What are the falls called?
Niagara.
We went to Niagara Falls in Canada, and then went about a week we were on this train, up and down. That's in order to confuse the enemy what was going on. Eventually we got to camp, to the port of embarkation. I had the name there someplace, but that's immaterial. And then we got to England, and we got to England and went to Tidworth. And at Tidworth, we got.
So you sailed across the Atlantic?
Oh yes. There's no plane.
Were you part of a convoy, or were you on
one of what?
One of the fast ships that went by?
No, the 12th Armored Division. The whole.
The whole 12th Armored
12th Armored Division,
was going
yeah,
together.
and a number of ships, and when we passed the Statue of Liberty, we were underneath because the 3 or 4 we were 7 to each, 7 bunks to each, 7 of one.
Actual bunks, or did they use those kind of
hammocks? Hammocks. Can you cut this off?
Yes.
Oh, I gotta go. At this late age, I have to take care of my prostate.
That's on. Let me get the other two.
All right?
Okay, we're on.
Okay. Now, we're in Tidworth. Tidworth is an old cavalry post that stunk of horse manure, the whole area. Ugh, I'll never forget that. It just, horse manure stinks. Now, cow manure doesn't smell bad as far as I'm concerned, but horse manure does stink. And the reason we were there was to get our equipment organized that had been shipped from the United States, the jeeps and the tanks and the radios and the half tracks and everything else together. That
okay, had this equipment been part of the convoy on the ships when you came over? Had they, or do you know how they got it there?
I don't know how they got it there because our men had to go all over England and Scotland in order to get this in the trucks, and they were scattered all over.
Okay, so the 12th Armored Division, it had just been the men coming over in that convoy?
I don't know that. I don't know. I really don't know if I imagine that some of these ships carried nothing but tanks and so forth and so on. But I don't know that to be a fact.
Okay. So you're
but
collecting your equipment.
They had to go all over Great Britain because some of them went. I know some of them eager to want to go to Ireland to get some equipment, and because they were Irish background and they volunteered. They said, I'll go to Ireland to get and so forth. Some of them wanted to go to Scotland to get the equipment that we needed. Once we got our equipment, I believe it was in September 1944. We crossed the channel. Some of us went to I wish I had these notes here with me. Some of us went to France. I remember myself where I landed in one of these boats out there. It was crowded up with full of. We had all of our equipment, which was at that time a bag. That's all we had, a bag and a weapon.
Okay.
My weapon was a carbine.
Okay, let's back up a little bit. This is September of '44 when you're crossing the
Crossing,
channel.
yeah.
Where were you when you got the news about the invasion of D-Day?
Well, in the States someplace.
In the States?
Yeah.
What were your thoughts when you heard?
I really don't remember. It didn't, because at that time there was so many battles going on to me it wasn't of that tremendous amount of wasn't that big a deal, because there were so many battles going in Africa and in Italy and Belgium. There were so many of those that it was just one of those. What I thought at that time was just one of those other invasion battles. At that time we did not have the idea of what we have seen on television these days, of so many thousands of ships or that were crossing that ocean. We really didn't realize that. It was just another battle, just another battle. It wasn't magnified to be that big.
Okay.
But afterwards, thank the Lord for television that we were able to see what a tremendously armada it was.
Okay, so go back. We'll move on to September '44 when you're going over into France.
Yeah, and I remember we went to in France is where we got. Now, as far as drinking is concerned, in England, the beer was warm. None of the Americans liked warm beer, so most of us didn't drink beer. What I drank in England was mint gin. And I never drank mint gin before in the States. In the States, we drank primarily whiskey, and I'm not a beer drinker to begin with, but in France, we got Calvados. That's a distillation of apple, because we landed in a place where apples all over the area, and we drank quite a bit of Calvados, and we found that I found the French people in this area to be ugly. They were short, and they weren't good-looking people. I remember that that's the first impression that I got of the people, that they were not good-looking.
Okay. Well, were they friendly to Americans?
Well, yes, they were in a certain way. They were friendly, but we were going so fast. The armored division that we later on will find out that we were known as the mystery division because of what we did with Patton, and we were known as the division of lightning that we were going so fast all the time. The armored division is fast. We conquered, and later on, as I will tell you, all of the people all of the Germans that came under us, that we took prisoner, we just left there, maybe with a couple of MPs to handle thousands and thousands of Germans, until the infantry came back that were behind us to clear up and to get these people, these prisoners, these war prisoners, under their control. Now the people in France, they were primarily we were operational in a war, in a real war situation. Up to this time, it had been make-believe and so forth and so on. And here we were with our putting up wire. That's one of the things that you put up wire from where you are to the next place, to the next place, to the next place, and you bring messages by jeep from the headquarters to the battalions, the infantry, to the artillery, and to the tank battalion, and we have radio communications from one to the other, and this was the real thing, and we were serious about that. And we did not have enough time to drink too much or to womanize too much, because we were in a hurry. And so not until we got to Luneville, after we from Le Havre is where, after we from Le Havre to Luneville, there it was a fast about 4 or 5 days. And there we were ready to start killing people in Luneville. After this time, we just little skirmish here, little skirmish there. We weren't really serious in killing anybody. Now, I'm saying this from an observer, because I didn't do any killing. But when we got to Luneville, we got together, and then our tank battalions and our infantry battalions and our artillery battalions actually went out to kill people, to fight.
Because you were on the front lines.
We were on the front lines, right. And then, once again, I am not connected with this. At this time, what I'm doing is, I'm there in case they need me for a cryptographer. I'm equipped, and I know how, but they have the best doing the cryptography. And so I'm in message center. And all of us, the drivers of Jeeps, were cryptographers or radio operators and whatnot. We were well equipped. We were well, the signal company, we were trained to drive a peep. We call them peeps, not Jeeps, but peeps. And we were radio operators, and cryptographers, and we were message center personnel. And now, of course, we have the wire section, which is they're the pole climbers. The funny part about that is that some of these guys will go up a pole, and then they will slide down and get all scraped down. Pole climbers, and then we had the radio, the equipment repaired people. They repaired radios and teletypes and things like that. And then we had message center, teletype, wire, and radio. That was the primary thing.
The wires, were they always put up on poles?
Oh, no. That's
That's why I thought. You usually let them on the ground at first, right?
Well, yeah, but then the tank will come along and knock them out. Now that I'm a unit representative of the 12th Armored Division Association, I've been writing. Each month we have the Hellcat News puts out a paper, and from the wire people, I've had letters telling me how they put out the wire. And one of the things that at one time they did put them along the road, but what happened was that the tanks came along and they chewed them up. So they put them on trees along the road. And then, so later on we learned that the best way to put wire up was above the ground, and it's fast. Because the wire was put ahead of the CP of the combat people. If a CP was going to be, let us say, in point A, the wire people had to be at point A before the people got to it. See, so it was learned that it was put on buildings and on trees and above the ground. Now, and of course, all of these people were all new kids, nice, good-looking kids, and especially with the infantry and the tank battalions, they got their radios were always, not always, but most of the times they were not working according to the SOP. So we had to send our radio repair people to these places to be repaired. Now, many of these very technical individuals came in with the ranks of sergeants. We were tech sergeants. We had a T on T4s, T5s, T6, T7, after T7. There were technical individuals that had been doing this in civilian life. So they were, as I said before, most of us were well schooled, educated. Besides that, we were educated through common sense of actually doing these things. So the signal division, the signal company, was usually more brainy than the infantry or the tank battalions, because there you have to have muscle and you have to know how to operate these things as well. Well, so that's a new. And then at Herlisheim, we met. The division met. There were 2 African-trained SS Panzer divisions, armored divisions, African-trained. They were well-trained, 2 against 1 very wet first and second time combat division, the 12th Division. We met at Herlisheim, and they beat the living hell out of us. We lost battalions. They took the battalion tanks against us after they captured us. And I don't know exactly how many, but we lost thousands of men at this Herlisheim. And at this time, the black troops were quartermaster primarily, and they were troops that didn't have to do very much fighting, that is, physical fighting. But they wanted to become fighters as well. In order for the black troops to become fighters, they had to take 1 grade down. For instance, if somebody was a sergeant, he'd come in as a corporal. If an individual was a captain, he came in as a first lieutenant. He took 1 grade down to become a fighting man. And so we got these black troops. And thank the Lord for these black troops. They got our tails out of there alive. And then we got more white troops and so forth in order to become strong, fighting strength again. And then we had what is known as the Cold War pocket. Colmar Pocket. This is south east France. The German troops were still on French soil. Now, my wife and I went there after the war to Colmar, and most of the people in Colmar are German. They're French, but don't call them German because they'll cuss you out. I mean, literally, they cuss you out in German and French and any other because they're French, but they are German. Anyhow, the German troops were there, and we drove them out. Then became part of. We were with the 7th Army all this time, and the 7th Army became connected with the French Army. I forgot anyhow, we were in the 21st Corps. Different amount of different armored divisions, also infantry divisions, and in order to get to Colmar, you have to go over some mountains, very high. Well, I've been there afterwards, and I was able to see them, and my son was able to drive these, and we went there in the springtime. It was awful the way that these mountains were. They were full of snow there because this happened in January at Colmar.
And it was an exceptionally cold winter. We need to take a break here.
Okay.
Because we've got to change our tapes.
Okay. I can tell you about Colmar because I was there.
Okay. We'll do that on a new tape.
Velasquez.
Okay.
Not Quest.
Well, I'm going to let you say it. Wait a minute, this has to... This is the second tape of the interview on February 22nd, 2002, and this interview is with, and could you tell me your name again, please?
Ismael Velasquez.
And when we stopped with the first tape, you were getting ready to tell me about Colmar.
Colmar, where the Germans were still on French soil. And the interesting part about this is that about 4 or 5 years ago, my wife and I made a trip of what the 12th Armored Division did, and one of the places that we went to was Colmar. And our son, who is now a pilot for Continental Airlines, drove us up there and went over those mountains. And I'm telling you, those mountains are... this was in the summertime, but those mountains were very narrow, and at certain places they were just carved along the side of a mountain, and then way down on one side was about 300 or 400 feet down below is where you could see. And nevertheless, that's where we went. And by the way, we were, as I said before, that we were, the 12th Armored Division was assigned to the 21st Corps, which was part of the French Army. Now, people in my division will tell you that the French took all of the credit and the parades and all of those things, and they were all were going into Colmar, and after we liberated Colmar, that they said that they liberated Colmar. But it was so many infantry as well as armored divisions that it was a hell of a traffic jam in these very narrow mountains going into Colmar. I mean, it was an awful traffic jam of tanks and infantry and trucks full of infantry people going. It was awful. We had more problem. I remember that. I remember that distinctly. The way that we had to wait and wait and wait until we had, for miles and miles, a jam of trucks and tanks and whatnot in these mountains in order to get down to Colmar. And then at Colmar is where the fighting was. And then when we finally got the Germans out of Colmar, they had these tremendously large cannons on German soil, and on it was stated that on a certain minute or a certain hour that they would shoot these tremendously large artillery pieces into the city of Colmar. We didn't know where in the hell they're going to fall, because they would fall in the city itself, any place, and of course wherever the shell fell, it would destroy whoever was in there. And we were housed throughout Colmar until we were able to do away with these heavy gun that was in Germany. So we were afraid that we might, one of these days, a shell may fall on the place we were and we wouldn't be there. So eventually, when we did away with the gun and the French paraded up the streets and down the streets of Colmar, I was there recently, about 5 years ago, and like it is in all of the European cities, the streets are very, very narrow. And this, about 2 or 3 years ago, I was in Spain, and one of the Spaniards there that I became friendly with says, you notice that the streets in the cities are go and the crooked. Says, there's a reason for that. I said, how come? He says, well, because with shooting arrows, you can only go so far, and then you turn and you can't go any further. And so that's the reason why the streets are that way, and in order to eliminate primarily the shooting of the arrows, which goes back 700 or 800 years in medieval time, and even to they are so narrow because the only transportation then were either horses or foot, and that's just to get from one place to the other. Now with these cars that we have, or with the vehicles that we have made to transport throughout all of France and all these old villages, and Germany, and Spain, and Italy that I've been in recently in the past 5 years, the streets are so narrow. Well, that's the way it was in Colmar. One thing I must tell you, that this last time I was in Colmar, as I said, I spoke French was my secondary language, and German I learned from my first wife. That the first 2 years that I was married to her, we spoke only in German. So French and German were very easily spoken very easily, just like Spanish or English with me. So I told these people that I wanted, in this restaurant that I went to, I says, I want to have some German sausages with German sauerkraut, with German ham, and we'll just take it on in. And then after I got to tell them what I wanted on my plate, says, you're in the wrong place. Says, we have nothing German here. Everything here is French. And says, I said, well, your name is a German name. Says, well, that's my father's name. Says, but I'm French, and everything that I cook in this restaurant is French. There's nothing German here. So I was a guest in this restaurant, but they let me know that they were not German, that they were French.
Okay, and this is when you went back to
That's when we went back, yeah, that's about 3 or 4 years ago. So the French in Colmar are more French with German names, and this fellow was telling me that his mother couldn't speak French, only German, but she hated the Germans from the First World War, in which she was taken advantage of by the German soldiers. She was sexually taken advantage by the German soldiers. And said she hated the Germans, but she couldn't speak French. Well, this is an aside of what happened at Colmar. And then after Colmar, it was decided that we had to get into Germany itself, into the land of Germany. And so one morning, we got the order, says, any patches that has 12-hour division, you take off. Anything on your vehicle says that 12-hour division, you just obliterate. You don't put anything, nothing. So all our vehicles had 12-hour division, 152nd Signal Company, 23rd Technical, whatever, that was just blanked out. So we were doing nothing. He says, where we going? He says, just follow us. I said, where we going? He says, never mind where you're going, just follow us. So.
Okay, and what about fuel?
Fuel. God bless them. That were the black troops.
The Red Ball Express?
The Red Ball Express. I have a name, but I don't think that why not? I'll tell you what we call them. Okay. And it's not very nice, but that's what we call them. The motherfucking double-clutching Red Ball Express. That's what they call them. They double-clutching motherfucking... when Red Ball Express came, I don't care what you were doing or where you were going, you got out of the way. Because they came through with the ammunition and with the stuff. And they came through. And they had along the trees, especially in France, they had red dots or whatnot where the Red Ball Express would come through. And when they came through, and they didn't stop right there. If you were in the water, in the way, they ran over you. Yeah, I'm telling you, that's one thing that the Red Bull Express, they were all black, and they were good drivers. They didn't care. I think they were all drunk when driving those things. But we know not once that we have ammunition. Now, many times the vehicles that we were driving, the peeps that we had driving, they were no good. We just left them, and somewhere or the other, the maintenance got us another one. Just left it on the side and got another one. Oh, I must tell you what happened here before this happened, before Colmar. I was assigned, because of my French, as a messenger with the French army. And we were physically, I was living with them, and had any messages that the French army would want to send into the 12th Division, I would take it over to them, and either I would speak it out, or else, well, I was multilingual. And one time we were all laying down there, and then there was one fellow from the Pyrenees, part of Spain and France, who spoke Spanish. Of course, my Spanish was much better than my French. And I saw that these guys were leaving. I said, "Qu'est-ce qu'il y a? What's going on?" He says, "Well," it says, "the 88s are aimed directly for here." I said, "How you know?" He says, "They know. These messages have been close by." He says, "Don't worry about what the infantry does. These guys, these messages have been out there, and they know that the 88s are aimed for here at a certain hour, and this is going to be completely taken out, so they're leaving." So they're just taking off with their vehicles and just leaving. Now, in Abilene, Texas, the G3 wanted to learn Spanish. And as I said, I was bored. And so he used to call me once in a while, and I used to practice Spanish with him. And so he was a friend. He was at that time he was a full bird colonel, and I was PFC. So I went over to him from the French, from the 21st Corps, and I said, "Look, I said, the French messenger said that this place is going to be, it's aimed with the 88s. And at a certain hour, forgot what, says they're going to completely do away with this. Ha ha ha, he says, that's bullshit. He said, that's just talk. I said, no, I wouldn't say that, Colonel. I said, these guys, they've been up in the front, and they know, they've seen the guns, and they know there's going to be here. Ah, I said, I don't believe it. That's just talk. Well, I'm taking off, Colonel. Says, if they say there's going to be done away with, I believe them. So I did take off. I took my Jeep and I went to a town and went into a place out there. It was 3 stories down below, and there were a lot of DPs, women and civilians and so forth. And we had and they had rabbits. They had cooked rabbits and plenty of wine. And so they cooked the rabbits and wine, and that's all. And we ate cooked rabbits and wine. And I had my jacket on. It was all full of, I was there for 1 day and 1 night. And it was true. I found out later on that the colonel took it up and said, I found out from somebody that it's going to be at the 88th went there. He says, let's get the hell out of here. So the headquarters of the CP were taken out of that area away from the aiming of the 88s that was going to, and so the CP was saved. Not because of what I said, but he checked it on and they did, so they were not wiped out. But I took this Jeep and I went out myself. And a couple of days later on, I came back to the company and says, where were you? I said, well, I knew it was going to be bombed out, so I was with the French army, so we all left. Says, so I said, well, that's an offense, leaving the enemy, leaving the combat zone, and when you're going to be fought on. So that's a court-martial, general court-martial offense. So I said, no, well, I didn't know anything. So this company commander, who I thought his name was Cure, I'll tell you more about that later on. He said, I'm going to give a general court-martial. So in the meantime, I was not allowed to do anything. I was just taking it easy for 3 or 4 days. He says, no, I said, we can't give you a general court-martial because we won't. So we're going to give you a special court-martial. And so they worked on that for a while, for not 4 or 5 days. And they couldn't give me a special court-martial because I did not come under that. So my company commander says, well, by God, I'm going to get your ass one way or the other. I'm going to give you an article 15, I think it was. I'm going to court-martial here for the company. So what they did, they sent me in the back because the Neo was doing some cooking around for the guys. I went back to the rear echelon to work in the kitchen for 1 month. Oh, I had it made. Beautiful, beautiful place to sleep on. And 1 or 2 girls, different a night. All of the wine I could drink. All the good food I got for 1 or 2 months. And the only thing I do is just wash pots and pans and help the cook for a month. And so later on, much later on, when I found out about 12th Armored Division Association, I thought that Cure was the company commander. So I don't want to face him because he court-martialed me. And I had to because the guys in the 21st Corps were saving their asses, and I didn't want to get blown up. And I did tell the G3 about it, and somewhere there he got him out of there. So I found out that Cure was signal officer. He was not the company commander, but I didn't want to see him. I told my wife about it when I found out about the 12-hour Division Association. I don't want to have anything to do with it. And anyhow, in 1995, I finally went to one of the association meetings, and of the 12-hour Division Association, because we had a reunion every year. And this is the time that I had told my wife that she asked me, "What did you do during the war?" I said, "Nothing." And so you ask this other guy what he did during the war. So I said, "What did you do during the war?" He said, "Nothing." Because we were there in case they needed us. What we did, I did the cooking and I did the foot messenger here and there and so forth. But in case they needed us, we were there. So, and then he told me, he says, I was not, no, the company clerk, who was a big shot in North Carolina at that time, says, this company commander says he was doing that to everybody. Court-martial, because he was drunk with power. Court-martial, but you weren't court-martial. Says they just needed somebody to help with the kitchen in the back. That's why it's in the back, cook. And so, we became good friends. And Cure and his wife now and my wife were the best of friends. And his son has recently become a member of the association, which I'm very proud of. He's well, going back to the story, so we wiped everything off our vehicles, and in about 3 days, we just, on this side of France, along the Danube, along the Rhine, we just went like mad. We just went and destroyed every place that we went. We destroyed, and we left the people there, the Germans that wanted to surrender, and the infantry came after us and took them as prisoners, and went to Worms, and then at Worms there was a pontoon bridge that we had the 12th Division had driven with this Mr. Division, and it was in the newspapers that Patton has a Mr. Division, the Mr. Division, and that's the way we were known. That's the Mr. Division of Patton. And we crossed the Rhine at Worms, and from then on we went on the other side of Germany, and town after town after town after town, so fast. It is now around, I'd say it was around March, April, something like that. This happened.
45.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you have any encounters with Patton at all?
Myself, the only thing I remember about Patton is, which was which we all did. We all had to pee in a river when we crossed it. And right here in this book that I gave you, in which Patton is peeing in the Rhine, you heard about that, huh?
Oh, of course.
Yeah. When we crossed the river, we had to pee in it. And I got a picture in this book for the 12th Division in which Patton is urinating in the Rhine. No, we didn't like the guy. The 12th Division, we have no love, really. Because for many, many years, we were only known as the Mr. Division. Now, in the association with the Hellcat News, we publish the Hellcat News every month, and we have, for each company or each battalion, we have a representative, and I am the representative of, since 1995, of the 152nd Signal Company. And I telephone these people, and I write to them, and they write to me, and we are close. I have about 60 men that are alive, and we're all the same way. In 80s, have one that's 93, and the wives are dying, and their great grandchildren are the ones that are the kids now. Their children have children. For instance, my 2 daughters and my grandchild and my granddaughter are members of the association. And what I'm trying to do right now is to get these children to become members of the association, so the inheritance that we are leaving behind, this museum that we have made in Abilene, Texas, and the history that we have, which I'm doing right now, is theirs. It is theirs, and what you're doing, you're taping this, so my children can carry on the history of the Second World War and what I did in it. Anyhow,
okay, so you crossed the Rhine.
Crossed the Rhine, and very fast. I mean fast. No womanizing. The only thing we did was to steal or liberate. We didn't steal. Liberate potatoes and geese.
Okay,
and
the potatoes, because your men didn't really like the dried potatoes, right?
The what?
The dried potatoes, the
No,
dehydrated potatoes?
no. What we had a box for food. We had a carton box in which it had cheese and 3 cigarettes and chewing gum, and we had something to keep us awake. I forgot what it was, but it did keep us awake. And then we had some cans out there that was sea rations. And you get tired of that. So anytime the guys wanted what the guys did, they got me a stove, and the strongest stuff in France was a liqueur, which was 100 proof alcohol. It sells in the United States for about $60 a bottle. I forgot the name of it. And that's what I used to use for fuel for my stove. And the oil, they used to get me lard. I used to render it off. Fat, I used to render it off to fry potatoes. And they used to get rabbits. I used to kill them and dress them and either fry them or cook them and whatever. And of course wine, all the time wine. Wine and champagne. And so that's what I did. I kept my buddies happy, and sometimes they might get hurt for some way or the other. They used to come to Velasquez to see if we can get them some penicillin. Penicillin was new in those days, and I could get it by swapping food or batteries or flashlights with the medics. And sometimes I used to even swap plain alcohol with them. Well, we didn't drink it, but we used to use it to clean or else for the stove. So at one time or the other, we went through all of the southern part of Germany. I didn't go up in the northern part, southern part of Germany, as far as Austria. We liberated many camps. Lidsberg, I believe, is the name of the town, where we liberated thousands of skeletons with meat on them that were prisoners, mostly Jews. But I must tell you that the Nazis also had these not only Jews, but these individuals that are religious. They were not. I forgot the name of this religion. We liberated a great number of these
Jehovah's Witnesses.
Jehovah's Witnesses, right. Jehovah's Witnesses. Many Jehovah's Witnesses, because they were treated as badly as the Jews. They were not considered. They were not considered as Christians, as we realized.
What did you think when you did liberate, when you were involved in the liberation of these places?
We were going so fast, I told my wife, we were going so fast that these people came out from these places out there trying to get us to help them, and they were so thin that they just couldn't make it. We just ran over them with the tanks and with vehicles. And the roads out there, 4 or 5 bodies that we ran over. That was the closest I've seen of cruelty of dead people in combat, where these prisoners would come up to either thank us or to be with us or to see. But we were going so fast, we wouldn't stop for them. Couldn't stop for them. You wouldn't believe, not unless you were there, to see these bones with a little skin on them walking around. Bones with a little skin on them walking around. And what they had was just like a nightgown made out of cotton. That's all they had. And it was ice and snow all over the area. It was awful. That's something that once you saw it, it imprinted into your mind, and it was horrible. And then I did not myself. I did not have the opportunity to go down to one of these camps to see what's going on. But I had some of the guys, some of the messengers did go down there and saw it. And it was cold, so you couldn't smell too much of the stink.
Now, that's what I was going to ask you about. Could you smell any of it?
No.
Okay.
Now, let me tell you one thing that I did see. At one place that we stopped for about 2 or 3 days, there were bodies carted like you cart wood, one on top of the other, put snow in between, for 100 yards of bodies, one on top of the other. The French had a great deal of African troops there, different dresses and whatnot, African troops, and they were black and white. Of course, they were just like wood, about 10 foot high, with bodies all throughout.
These bodies, were they from some of the forced labor camps, or?
I don't know. They were just there. There were human bodies that were just between throw snow on them, and all them, just pick them up from the road or whatever. From the camps, they were not really human beings. They were bones walking with a little nightgown on them. That's all they had. No shoes. It was awful. And of course, many times I saw this, in which I saw a foot or an arm or a torso in a Jeep that had been blown up. I saw that quite often. When I see a Jeep on the side, you go over there and investigate. Oh, another thing. We were told many times, you see any German bodies with a lot of decorations and whatnot, keep away from them because they're a booby trap. And I listened to that. And I didn't see anybody going after these, because after a battle, they were laid out there, these German soldiers out there with medals here and the Lugers and whatnot. So we could go out there and pick them up, and then we're blowing up with some booby trap.
Right. What about, how did you deal with German prisoners, military prisoners?
They became a pain in the ass, to be honest with you.
Okay.
We had to feed them, and we had to be with them So some of the not us, but I mean not 152nd. We didn't take any prisoners per se, but some of these other guys that had it, they just as well kill them than be after them.
Were they receptive to
Oh
taking?
yeah.
No. Listen, for some individuals, they preferred not to have to take SS prisoners. Did any of that
No, I don't know.
none of that penetrated to you?
No.
Okay.
SS, I didn't see any. The only way that you could tell an SS was his uniform.
Right.
They were better dressed and better made, but I didn't see any. They SS. I didn't see any SS bodies or SS people as prisoners. I didn't see any. They were mostly German.
The Vermont.
Yeah, the Wehrmacht. They were very. They chocolate they wanted, or cigarettes they wanted something to eat, or something to smoke. They were all friendly with a big smile, and of course we treat them like dogs. No good. But we kept up. We in the signal company, we had very little to do with it. I know one. At times we had some guards to guard our cryptography unit, and some of these damn fools had taken 1 or 2 prisoners, and they had to be with them all the time. They have to share their rations with them. And one guy says, first opportunity I get, I'm going to kill this son of a bitch. He's taking all my food. So.
Do you know whether that ended up happening?
No, I didn't see any. I didn't see anybody kill anybody because of combat. Anyway, but that, we did say we're going to kill them, this and that and that, but
you didn't.
no. Well, I read recently that we went as far as Austria, and the 12-hour division, and in Austria, this was in May the 7th. It was the Germans were still holed up, and there were a number of French dignitaries that were being held in this castle out there. We liberated them, or else with the help of the Wehrmacht, the German soldiers fighting against the SS. It's two different people. I understand. The SS were professional soldiers that had been ingrained by schooling of the philosophy of world domination of the Germans. And the Wehrmacht, they were nice guys. They had to go like the way we did. They were conscripted into the military. But with the help of the Wehrmacht, we fought against, and some of the civilian, the Austrians there, against the SS, until they finally gave up, and then they realized that the war was over, and we were able to. And one of them was de Gaulle's sister was up there. Oh, something else I must tell you. After the war, we were detailed to transport certain individuals to a plane. And my job, I was the Jeep that I was driving. I was to transport. I remember this. It was a bird, a parrot, I think it was, and a woman, and inconsequential things, and a couple of boxes I was going to take up to an airport. Later on, I found out that it was all of the household of this individual. I forgot his name right now. That was that made these these rockets that go to the moon. What's his name?
Von Braun, Werner von Braun,
Von Braun.
I think.
Well, that's what I had to do. That's to transport this woman who's having with a
His
kid.
wife?
No,
No,
just a
just
servant.
a servant?
Servant. That's what my Jeep carried her to the airport. I didn't know what you're in the military. You're told, I want you to do this. You don't ask why. You just do it.
Right.
And so later on, I found out, much later on, from Brown. Yeah. He is located in. His work is in Alabama, someplace. Yeah. So and after the war, I was assigned to the constabulary. The constabulary was originally formed in the Philippine Islands, and what the constabulary was to keep peace among the Philippine people on horses. And what we did in Germany is, instead of horses, we had motorcycles. And I was assigned to them after the war, and my job was the German youth activities. My job was to obtain brains, because brains is one of the booties of war. I don't know if you knew that, but brains is one of the booties of war. We ought to get as many brains from the conquered country and make them part of our own. So my job was to investigate young people that had a professional or a something that would be worthwhile for us. And so we gave them parties, and we gave them food, and we gave them literature, and we talked with them. And by this time, I was well proficient in German. I spoke German very well. And out of all of these people, what I did, there was one fellow who was interested in trees, and he was going to school to become what do you call this? People who work on trees.
Dendrologists? In the science of caring for trees?
Yeah, well,
dendrology?
Whatever it was.
Arbor?
The what?
I think it's a dendrologist. Anyhow,
he passed, and he's the only one, after about 6 months working, he's the only one that was worthwhile. They examined him. And so what happened, I found out. The funny part about this was that at one time I had my boys in this pup tent over here, and my girls in this pup tent over here. And one morning, my colonel got the mayors from this area to come and watch this what we had. And we found brass ears and drawers hanging out from the pup tents on this side, on both sides, brass ears and or panties. They had got together. And so the colonel says, "What's going on here?" I said, "I don't know." He says, "The boys supposed to sleep over here, the girls supposed to," but they got together. And so I was fired. I was sent home.
Okay, but before this happened, I've got some more questions about what you were doing in Europe. Before the war ended, when you're going through Germany and to Austria, did you have any encounters with the Hitler Youth?
No.
Okay.
No, we had, no.
Okay, what about displaced persons?
I married one.
You want to tell me about that?
Yeah. While I was in Abilene, Texas, as I told you before that I was a studious individual, I was a bookworm before the war, and we had these little discussions on the war and Hitler Nazism and socialism and communism and so forth. And so I didn't have a good body. And so in Abilene, I was going to the gymnasium, and I met an MP there, and he had a good body. And he brought me into how to use the different things in order to develop my body. So we became friends. And then we got to know each other. I told him that I was interested in medicine and so forth and so forth. And then, as I told you, as I said before, that one of the main things that the military police do in a war, when they get into a town, they go into a jewelry store and see how much gold or what they can get out of the jewelry store. You might call that stealing, but we call it liberating. They liberated it, and they were all full of good amounts of gold and stones and whatnot. Anyhow, we settled, the 12th Division settled in a town by the name of Heidenheim. And this individual, this MP comes and looks me up and he says, Velasquez, says, I found a woman in a DP on the side of the road. She's been mistreated, beaten up, and raped. And she's a Polak. And I took pity on her. So I gave a German woman here, some gold, and she's staying at our house, but she needs some medical care. So can you do anything? Well, I said, we'll see. So I went to see her, and she had been raped, and her perineum was completely torn from the vagina all the way to the rectum. And I had my penicillin powder, and I cleaned her up, and all the bruises I cleaned up, and with plain good alcohol, 100 proof alcohol, and I looked after her for about 2 or 3 weeks, and occasionally I would share my lunch with her. And she didn't live no more about 3 or 4 blocks from where we were stationed. So I would bring her something to eat, even though this woman had enough gold that he had given her, maybe $1,000 of gold, to keep this poor Polish woman. Well, she got well, and when she got well, she came over to where we were bunked. We were living in a hotel, more or less, and there were 3 of us in each room, and each one of us had a woman that slept with us. And so this girl came over, and she told the girl, "House, this is the Zimmer von meinem Mann. Ich möchte nicht, dass du hier. This is the room of my man, and I don't want you here." So she kicked out all of the girls, the 2 other girls that were sleeping with my buddies. She got them out. And the night when they came in, these other guys didn't have a woman. He says, "What happened?" So I said, "Well, this gal that everybody knew was taking care of her. And, everybody knew that because of what I've been doing in the war." He says, and so she put them out. Oh, they almost killed me because my girl put out their girls out. And so, little by little, she allowed to get the girls to come back. She didn't sleep with me there. She didn't sleep with me. I had no interest in her. After all, can you imagine of curing a woman's vagina and being blooded and so forth? And I had no interest in her. No physical, and she was a pretty girl, but I had no interest in her. Anyhow, she kept on coming and coming until she got under my skin, and we became friends. I had no interest in her, no sexual interest, because that type of interest doesn't come about for having fool around with a patient like that. So eventually we became very good friends, and I liked the girl. She was nice. pretty. And
But you viewed her maybe more as the physician since you had been thinking you were going to become a doctor?
yeah, to me she was just a patient. I had no sexual interest in her because I had all the women I wanted, pretty women. And so, but she grew on me. And then after we left Heidenheim, we went elsewhere, and I missed her. So I liberated one of the Jeeps from the motor pool, and I went down to Heidenheim on the super highway, the Autobahn, and it was cold, and I put her in the back seat out there, and I covered her up, and I brought her over to where I was, and she stayed with me until I went to England on a 6-day furlough. And then eventually I was transferred from the 12th Armored Division to the 1st Armored Division. And it just so happened that one of the company commanders of the 141st Signal Company had been one of the officers during combat. Walcott was his name. And he was the company commander. And around Thanksgiving, we got fresh turkeys. And he says, but most of the cooks had been rotated to the States, and many of the cooks had gonorrhea, so they couldn't cook. See? So this guy comes up to me and says, Velasquez says, I want you to take over the kitchen. I want you, and then you cook these turkeys. I said, no way. He says, I'll do it for my friend, but I won't do it for the government. I was a PFC. Well, he says, I'll tell you, I'll make a deal with you. You take over the kitchen, he said, and I'll make you a mess of you. I said, well, I'll give it some thought. He says, when will you make a mess of you? He says, 30 days. If you got the kitchen planned. So okay, I'll take it over. Now, it just so happened that while I was at Fort Knox, those of us who had any college information, we were made into lance corporals and lance sergeants in order to lead the troops, because there was one corporal who was the only NCO at Fort Knox for the whole company. And so, and those of us that had any college were trained specially to be left, column left and so forth, close order drill. And so one of these guys out there was also from Louisiana, and he and I became good friends. And he was a captain now, because he was the one that, I didn't tell you this, but after Fort Knox, we were going to be sent to OCS, those of us who had been lance corporals and whatnot. And we were playing ball one evening, and one of the big balls and hit me right in my private area, and my testicles swelled up. So I went to the hospital, and the other guys went to OCS. I didn't go to OCS, and he did, and then I had an encounter with him twice, and then later on, let's see.
Okay, you're trying to tell me how you end up getting to have a higher rank than PFC, I think.
Oh yeah.
You're trying to tell me how you end up getting to have a higher rank than PFC, I think.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And how you end up taking over the mess.
Yeah. So I did take over the mess. Now, one thing that I must tell you here, which is very important for this, my mess driver, the fellow who went to get the, Oh, he was he was a captain. He was in charge of Suez Gemün, where I was stationed, in charge of the town. And I found out about it. I says, well, nah, I got this this kitchen. Says I don't have any plates. I don't have any nothing for the tables. Says the chairs are we were stationed where the nuns lived. See, that's where the 141st Signal Company was stationed. He says, and I need some cooks because I cannot cook for 300 some odd men in the company. What 141st Signal Company was doing then was policing the wire from Germany that had been laid out. These guys were sent out to pick up this wire throughout and they were coming in there at any time, 24 hours to come and eat, any time to come have coffee or whatever. And so I got him to give me plates and silverware and tablecloths and cooks. He says, I have an SA, SR and SS or the fighting men, the SA or the administrative of the SS. He says, I have a cook from him. I got him in jail. And he told him right out, with the interpreter, he says, I'm going to let you have this, I'm going to put you in this guy's hands. He says, but I'm telling you one thing. He says, if you ever escape, he says, I'm going to keep your wife under surveillance. He says, I am personally going to put a knife in her belly and I'm going to cut her open, her belly. He says, if you ever escape.
Okay, and this is before the shooting stopped, right?
Well, this after. This
is after?
This is when I was 141st Signal Company. I was in the 1st Armored Division.
Oh, okay.
And so he gave me plates, and this guy, and he gave me tablecloths and everything, and then he gave me these coats. I got a picture of that. Oh, yeah, wonderful cook. And then he got another prisoners in there who was a baker. Oh, to make a long story short, I got the accommodation of the 7th Army. I got accommodation of my mess hall, the 7th Army, of being one of the best in the ETO, European Theater Operations. I had a wonderful kitchen. And much later on, and then at this, I had Maria Elena was one of my waitresses there. And what I did, we got a guest house, a place where a bar, more or less. On top there were rooms, which were used, like in case you wanted a woman, you can go up there and you have a room. And so that was across the street from where we were stationed. So I told this captain, I said, I want that. So he gave me this bar, and then we stocked it with liquor. And I told the guys, I said, I want your women to move up here. If you're going to sleep with them, move up here, and you stay with them. Stop fooling around with others. Just stay with them, and then I'll hire them, and I will give them food, and they can take some extra food to their parents, and you will stay with just that one woman. And that way we will not have any gonorrhea, because gonorrhea was awful. And so, by that, the 141st Signal Company, after in March, no VD, because the guys, all of them were pregnant, including Maria Elena. But all of my men had the women pregnant, including Maria, my wife. And so that's when I wrote my mother at home in New Orleans, and I said, I got a woman out here. I said, I don't love her. I said, she's a nice person, but she's pregnant. And my mother says, you marry that woman, and you come back with my granddaughter. And that's the way it was. I went back home. I got a 90-day furlough, went back home to New Orleans in April of 1946, and came back, and then married her. And just like my mother said, we had a granddaughter. She's 55 years old now. And and by the way, this captain that was from Louisiana who had been in OCS, who we had trained as NCOs in the Army, he was a godfather of my little girl in Germany.
Oh, wow. That's a nice story.
Yeah.
Okay, we're almost out of this tape. We can put another one in, or we can...
Well, the rest of the time, this is all I have
Okay.
with the 12th Armored Division.
Okay, well then, I want to thank you very, very much for taking the time to tell me about this. And is there anything you want to add before we turn off the camera?
Well, I want to tell the people that the 12th Armored Division Association is the only division in the United States Armed Forces that has a museum. It is in Abilene, Texas. This museum is housed with the things that we liberated from Germany, and it's full of letters and pictures, and everything in that museum was paid by us, the members of the living members of the 12th Armored Division. And I would like everyone to go. It's not a big museum such as this, but it's a museum of a division. And it still is the only museum of a division. This museum here is not of a division.
This concentrates on the 8th Air Force, but we also are trying to tell the story of World War II.
Yeah. And so I invite everybody to come see my museum at 12th Armored Division in Abilene, Texas. Thank you.
And thank you very much. And at this point, we'll turn off the camera.
All right.